Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to A Chat with Matt. Today I am joined by Bill Heffernan is the pronunciation, or did I butcher
You got
that?
it. That's correct.
Wow, lucky guess for me. I'm usually terrible with those. Bill, how you doing?
Pretty good today for a Monday. Great.
For a Monday, yes. So, Bill, why don't you tell the people about yourself and what you do?
Well, Matt, I'm now a retired guidance counselor and teacher, but I've always been around the world of music, and I have a show that's kind of on the shelf right now called the Saturday Sessions, a live music show on Roncesvalles Avenue at the Intersteer Tavern. It used to be at the Gate 403 before it closed. And I present the best of local musicians, and once in a while, a few touring musicians coming through. And that's lasted 16 and a half years until COVID. And along the way, one of our great performers, Jim Fay, who plays very much in the traditional and Celtic tradition, and was a fan favorite and a neighbor and a friend. He died suddenly at the age of 44, which was quite a shocker to us. And we had a memorial celebration of his life at Hughes Room on a Sunday afternoon 12 years ago, well, 2010. And that was a wonderful turnout. It was a beautiful day full of love and music and storytelling and laughter. We got to thinking about it and said, well, what if we did this annually and found a purpose other than just us getting together for our friend. And so we decided to start a bursary in his name for young musicians, facing barriers to making their music, be that financial or health or other related issues. And so that was the beginning of the Jim Fay Bursary. Along the way, we had a name change, and three more prominent Toronto musicians who were somehow in our circle also have died, and we now present bursaries in their names under the moniker the Shine Music Bursary is now our official title.
Where did the so you made that name change? Where did the name change to go to Shine come from?
It came from we were thinking of something a little more generic, if you will, or broad encompassing. Anyways, when we got news that that James Gray, the original Blue Rodeo keyboardist, had died, and his family did the same thing that we had done with Jimmy. At this point, we are unconnected. And I was asked to MC. There were two nights. It was an overflow crowd. They had to have two nights. I was asked to MC one of those nights for the James Gray event. And afterwards, they had not thought about the outpouring and any money that might have come in. And so they were sitting on a pot of money and had no particular plan for it. My good friend, Derek Downham, who has performed at Shine, suggested to them that they consider looking at approaching us and seeing if we could give the money away in bursaries. And we made them a counter offer and said, well, why don't you join us? And from that point on, we celebrated under the name Shine, Jim Fay's life and James Gray's life. A little bit later, in 2016, the son of Jim Fay, so Seamus, who was 2 years old, 2.5 when his dad died, was at Brock Brock Elementary School at this point in the story, and his teacher, music teacher, died suddenly. And that was Doug Queen, a member of the great band Jughead, kind of a bluegrass on speed kind of band, and hence same thing. We reached out to their family, and they joined us. And then just 2 years ago, we were approached by Julian Taylor, who's a musician up for Juno this year. He had begun to help out Shine, and he actually joined the committee this year. And he brought us to the attention of Bruce Adamson, a Toronto musician, guitarist, and his family. He had recently passed away. And so we invited in the Adamson family. So now Shine is in its 12th year, and we continue to be a bursary for young people facing barriers to making their music, especially in the field of folk and roots and bluegrass and traditional and singer-songwriter. And we honor each of those four men who died too young with a bursary in their name. And we award other bursaries too.
So I'm curious, what made the organization want to focus on youth facing barriers specifically?
I think that there are a number of teachers involved in our community, both the Saturday session community that I talked about earlier and the Shine committee. And so I think we were a number of us. I was a guidance counselor. We had an art teacher on the board. We have a music teacher. And Jim Fay's widow was also working at Eva's Initiatives at the time, which is an agency for young people who are homeless. And so it was now a cross section of people who knew the music business to some extent or were involved in it. People who were teachers, counselors, social workers, and then the connection to the homeless youth. Marie, by profession, is a fundraiser. So now we've got on board musicians, fundraisers, caregiving, teachers, counselors, etc. So that seemed to funnel it in that direction.
And what has been the general response? Like, who are some of the recipients of the past that have gone on to use this bursary to help progress their career forward?
Well, Jessie Reyes has won a Juno since receiving her award. And we've had a number of people have gone on to have burgeoning careers, I would say. And they have, in our past show, recently concluded, the format of the show is that we present professional musicians for their quote unquote star billing capacity for a live show. And we present a selection, a cross section. We can't present them all in one show, but a cross section of our award winners. And now we're at the point where some of our award winners are achieving the status of coming back to the show as a professional, and that occurred this year. We had Charmaine Deller, who the last time we saw her was on stage as a recipient, and then this time we saw her as one of the 4 billed artists. So that's the kind of impact it can have. Yeah, so it's been pretty successful. It's starting to feel like a community. I mean, it always was from the organizer's point of view, but from the angle of the recipients, I think they feel that they are part of historical web and weave, and that they're somewhere in that quilt, and they do stay in touch with us.
And so with the way that the event went this year, obviously you guys were used to doing the live shows, the yearly celebration, showcasing not only the winners, but some professional artists. How was the transition going from that to making it an all virtual experience because of COVID?
Well, learning curve, for sure. And if we move back from the final product, so if I look at it from the audience's point of view, the comments were that was really smooth, it was slick, it was really well done, et cetera, et cetera. So now it took a lot of work and a lot of time to get to that point. And so depending on who had which roles on the committee, it was either like way more work than before or way less, and different emphases and focal points, obviously. I mean, when we were live, we started out at Hughes Room, and then we moved over to Lula Lounge, and that became our permanent home. If you know Lula, there's a nice little side back room, and encased in glass room, and we would hold a silent auction in there, and that would generate thousands of dollars. Well, we didn't have that this year, and all of the people on that subcommittee for the silent auction, procuring the gifts, going to small businesses. Obviously, we were not going to go around knocking on small business doors this year for many reasons, including, we're not going to ask the people that were hardest hit to make a donation to us. So all of those people, for instance, in terms of the difference between virtual and live, is that whole component of our evening was subtracted. Those of us who, I got to tell you, I was MC, and that was much harder than doing it live, because I had to, we had to stitch together, the recording and learning lighting and getting everything right in that regard. Everyone has to go through that. But when you're live in an MC, you can pick up on the energy of the crowd. You can move off of the act that just performed that really shook the joint, or perhaps if it was a bit of a dud, you had to find a way to keep things. You had to dance. You had to dance in the moment and still do the job, and lay down the facts and get off the stage as quickly as possible. But that, what I found, was a challenge. And we shot my part over 3 days, and we did multiple shoots with different angles, because after my stuff was done, it had to be submitted to the producer who was putting everything together, and wanted to have options for him as to how he would stitch it together. So I found that part, it was quite a learning curve for me, and quite a different experience for sure. I think in some ways for the performers, I mean, you don't have to go 4 hours before your set and do a sound check. You don't have to figure out if is a club going to give you a free dinner, or do you have enough money this week to eat between the sound check and the show, and all of those things, right? You don't have weather to fight in case it's a lousy day. So I think for the performers, especially those who are now getting quite used to producing stuff virtually, it was probably a heck of a lot easier.
A question that I bring up a lot with guests, especially who had to adjust things either because of COVID or for whatever other reason to an online format. Do you think that if you didn't get put into that scenario where your organization had to move to an online setting, would your team have picked up the skills and learned the skills to do that? Or do you think you would have just been continuing along the same path?
You mean, so if this COVID situation never did occur, what would some of us plodded along in life and maybe not learned or experienced the things that we did?
Exactly.
I think so. I know I was finally starting to embrace it, these possibilities, home recording. Even I've thought about doing a podcast here from Hyde Park. I was thinking that way a little bit before COVID hit. But I think in my case, I know myself well enough that having the weekly live show and all that entails, I probably would have not got around to it. I mean, I was forced to with COVID. I was leaning that way. But so I think you're right. I think some people, especially, those that are full-time in this business, and they make their living in music, I think a lot of them were already there or well on their way there, because the industry's changing even pre-COVID. With streaming sites and everything else that's going on, the whole landscape's changing anyways. So I would say in relation to your question, probably a half and half. And of that half, I think 1/3 were already on their way. 1/3 probably would have never, ever. And the other third may or may not have, probably.
And kind of the tail end question to that whole scenario, when it's safe to do so and your organization is able to go back to Lula's and produce the show as it was, are you going to be, do you think you will be incorporating any aspect of any skills you learned, whether it be producing video segments or anything like that, towards that show? Or do you think it's going to go revert back to that format that your organization had?
I think there's already been, loose talk of some kind of hybrid, and it wouldn't surprise me if that's what happened. There's certainly a lot of people itching to get back to the live experience. However, I think one thing I've always tried to do, no matter what I've been working at, whether I'm a teacher in front of the classroom, whether I'm an MC or an auctioneer on stage, or whether I'm a performing musician on stage, I always think of the audience. And as an example, if I had 31 students in my class, I always added in a 30-second seat in my lesson plan. And I put myself in that seat listening to myself. And because I wanted somehow to have a sense of how, like sometimes we spend so much time on our own material and then we deliver it without not necessarily a sense of how it's going over. And so I think a lot of people now through COVID are comfortable having their form of entertainment come to them. I think we're going to lose some people. I think some people are not going to want to go back. And yet there'll be others that hunger and thirst for that. So we haven't had we've got a meeting coming up soon where we will assess the whole process and then we plan for next year. And I would not be surprised if we're able to pull off a hybrid, that's what we'll do.
I could sit on another shoe to drop. I could sit with the weight of the world and wait for the world spinning to stop, but I choose to love you, and I choose to see it through. Take the fates, come as they may, face the storms and the snow off the lake, but I choose you. I could let the pain of the past be the way I see this life. I could let all of those scars determine what I allow to be mine, but I choose to love you, and I choose to see it through. Take the fates, come as they may, face the storms and the snow off the lake, but I choose you. And we've all got our pasts and our scars, but if there's anyone to hold my heart, I choose you. And I choose to love you, and I choose to see it through. Take the fates, come as they may, face the storms and the snow off the lake, but I choose you, and to love, loving you. And I choose you.
And that, I think that's also a concerning thing that a lot of the industry, at least from the people I've talked to, have caught on to. Like you mentioned, it's that divide that's going to be either a selection of people, who knows, however the size, that are thirsting to go back out to a show and actually get back into a space with other people, while a lot of other people are accepting the fate of what is, whether that be, and this is a concept I also discussed in last week's podcast, like the movie theater concept, for example, where everything is switching to being distributed on a digital platform, viewed virtually from home. And it's still interesting to see the different workshopping and stuff like that. But in terms of like the industry changing, because you've been involved with the industry for many years, what's been some of the most significant changes, even pre-COVID? Because you mentioned earlier the industry was changing a lot because of streaming and other things. Is there anything else that you notice that's been changing a lot?
Well, I mean, that's certainly the big one, because it's income generating, and it's loss of income generation in most cases. So that's a huge one. I think another one is the advancement of technology, and a lot of performing musicians have embraced what is available and what they can do with home studios. And And it's getting to the point where the ones who have A, embraced it, and B, put in the time and learned, or they may have had a natural propensity to it anyway. Some people are natural more that way than others, but together, you can put something out of very, very high quality. And so that is certainly changing. I got my good friend and producer, Alec Fraser, is actually releasing Alec Fraser Jr. is releasing a new release today, and it's all digital. And I mean, he's a performing musician and a producer with his own studio, but with COVID, he sat down and finally put out his first solo album. I mean, this guy's won 25 awards across every bracket you can win them, including Junos, and yet he's never done a solo, and he's done it all with his own equipment, and it's a first class production. And so many others are able to do this now, and we're doing it even before COVID. And there's upsides and downsides to that, you know, because there's other people losing work because you're able to do their work, or what their contribution was towards putting out an album, if you will. So without question, technological advances, attitudinal advances among musicians to embrace an ever-changing landscape, and of course the major thing of streaming, and just how small a percentage of that ever gets back to the creator of the music.
How much of the industry do you think is going to change once we're back to a more normal footing in terms of like basically all aspects of the industry and trying to figure out how to adjust? Like, do you kind of have do you have a guess of how the landscape's going to be, or is it still very much up in the air?
For me, it's very much up in the air. But I think for those with their pulse on the finger a little bit more in tune, and more actually visionary, I would say. I tend to be a visionary, a dreamer, and getting things done by nature, but not in this isn't my number one field. I'm not, I don't make my bread and butter and my only living from music. And so I'm not as invested. I think that's a great question you've asked. I believe you would get some phenomenal answers to that question, but probably not from me. I just had my 70th birthday, and I mean, I'm still learning and growing at some fairly basic stuff. And part of that is because I have had other careers along the way. And so I'm in a nice groove. I'm happy with my music. I'm happy with the way I go about it, and the small roles that I do have in the community with my music and my emceeing and hosting. And so I'm content to just, I still take music lessons. I'm still learning, trying to improve. But I'm not on the cutting edge enough to give much more of an in-depth answer to that question. But I think that would be a great thing for you to pursue one day, because I think there's some great answers out there.
It's been interesting. A lot of the industry I've talked to thus far, because I'm about to pass 1 year of doing this podcast, and to be honest, like a lot of people are kind of in the same boat as the answer you just gave. And I think it's because so much of the industry, including myself, we just don't know what's going to be because of the ever-changing announcements from the government, both provincial, federal, municipal, whatever it is. And it's that certainty and the fear of the unknown that we're trying to work our way around and try to find solutions. Because essentially what I've seen from a lot of the industry is just they're going to try and throw a big enough net, and hopefully they're going to catch something that makes sense, because everything is so up in the air right now. We just don't know what it's going to be. I do want to kind of circle back to the developing artist aspect, because that's something I very much support and believe in. What do you think some of the bigger challenges are for these up and coming artists, like some of these Shine recipients, as opposed to in the past of the industry?
Well, I think one of the huge challenges, and it's always been there, is that tug of war between pursuing your muse and getting a job, pursuing a career, having a right? And that's always been there. And so to begin with, I and the Shine committee, we applaud those who even dare to follow their muse. However, the playing field is a lot different than it was 20 years ago or 30 years ago, in that there was far more of a, you take a swing at your muse, which I encourage everybody to follow their number one primary dream at all times. But you could take a swing at it, and there would be some kind of safety net if you found out that you didn't really enjoy it as much, or you didn't have it, or you weren't being successful. But now everybody, not only those who went the music route, there was never a guarantee of a quote unquote real job. But there was a lot of other real jobs to fall back onto should you decide you want to go that way, or you could do something like I did, fall into a job or a profession that kind of lasted a lifetime and allowed you in your spare time to pursue your muse and your interests. Now, almost all youth, in some ways, I say nearly all youth qualify for our bursary, because they're all at some kind of financial risk in this gig economy. So the gig economy has far surpassed just those of us who go out looking for gigs. It's become the juggernaut of society in many ways. So that exists. The other barriers include ridiculous rent in the GTA, and that's a real impacting detriment to those trying to make music, because you need to have the ability to look at the world and comment on the world. And if you are almost closed out of the housing market, or almost closed out of decent apartment rental, if you're almost condemned to a basement to pursue your muse, then that's debilitating and it's limiting. And so we got a huge problem in this city with affordable housing, and it really, really affects those who choose to pursue their art and their music. In some cases, I mean, many of the youth we work with have already parted, from their parents. Some on good terms, some on not good terms, some on no terms. But there's a lot of that parental pressure, like the younger end of our youth. So I think we define it as 16 years old up to mid to late 20s, something like that. Those at the closer end and perhaps still connected to home and parents, there's a lot of pressure also, like going against them. Their friends. I mean, not in all cases. In some cases, the parents are tremendously supportive, but there's that. So the odds are stacked against in many ways, with conditions that are created by the capitalist market. It's as simple as that. So it's not right.
Drops his kids off at school, and he's thinking of you, like all of us do. Sends his assistant for coffee in the afternoon, around 1:32. He knows what to do. She lives in daydreams with me. She's the first one that I see, and I don't know why. I don't know who she is. He takes a boat out. Imagines just sailing away, and not telling his mate, wouldn't know what to say, She lives in daydreams with me. She's the first one that I see, and I don't know why. I don't know who she is. She's the first one that I see. She lives in daydreams with me. I don't know why. I don't know where she is. Lives for the memory, a woman who's just in his head, and she sleeps in his bed while he prays. Pretend, so pretend. She lives in daydreams with me. She's the first one that I see. I don't know why. I don't know who she is. She's the first one that I see. She lives in daydreams with me. I don't know why. I don't know where she is. Where she is. Where she is. Who she is. Who she is. Where she is. Who she is. Where she is.
Yeah, the culture definitely, and especially related to the capitalism culture, like you mentioned, it's that mentality of work, nonstop work, with very limited time to pursue the muse, as you beautifully said. And the gig economy, it's made time very limited for those. And something that this pandemic has shown me is, and just like you mentioned earlier, with if COVID never happened, things would have probably continued the same way. Even for myself, like this podcast, for example, because I was working in the industry a lot. I had another job. Like I was going nonstop. But the pandemic allowed me to step back and reevaluate what I was pursuing, and actually choosing what to pursue with my time carefully, because time is limited, as obviously a lot of us know. And to pursue what you want to pursue is such a rare thing now, because, and even like you mentioned, like parental and society view certain things and art. And also you can look at how the government's been responding to the music industry crisis that's been affecting everyone, which is like major venue closures, many people not having any money, not qualifying for CERB because of the gig employment fine line, and they're trying to find ways around that now. But when you compare it to other countries like Germany, off the top of my head, like the German government provided like somewhere in the realm of $350 million towards the live music industry in itself. And while Canada is only 3% of the music market, there is a significant drawback towards that, because there's while there are a lot of great organizations like Shine, Factor, Music Canada, and all these other organizations that put money towards the artists, the the overall view from the government, which I've seen, and especially it comes across because, and I know this is a big stigma for them, it's the alcohol being served in venues, and there's certain culture that surrounds the music industry. But I think that not a lot of people, or a lot of people, are now realizing the importance of not only music but just art in general, and how much it affects the world. And I don't know if that's going to change because of COVID. I hope there's more of an appreciation for it once things are back to normal. But yeah, no, I completely agree with you 100%. And I definitely think that it's wonderful to see that organizations like Shine are trying to help put artists on the right footing, because Canada, I think, needs to put more of an investment into the development of their own artists, because while we're seeing the export where we have some of the biggest artists in the world, but they're now primarily being based in the US, because that's where more of the commercialized success is of whatever genre they're pursuing.
Yeah, I agree with wholeheartedly with what you're saying there. And they'll never repress, they being the big world, big culture. The best of, not all of the best, but some of the best of music made will make it to the top. But the issue really is that how many are squeezed out along the way that ought not to be squeezed out along the way? How many were never encouraged instead of having been encouraged? How many face roadblocks, and what are the roadblocks? And in some cases it's mental health, in other cases it's a pure dollars and cents. But in so many other cases, it is falsely fabricated by markets, and it is not supported by governments who ought to be. That's what we should be doing with our tax dollars. Europe is far better. You mentioned Germany, of course, a country run by a woman, as are all the top performing COVID countries, if you take a look, are all led by women. Interesting. But Europe in general supports. North America goes for the superstar every time, and there's not much left over at any level along the way. And Europe is the opposite. Their mid-seat capacity concert halls, their embrace of non-stars who are fabulous musicians, there's something in the culture and in the water over there that understands far better than we do here. And so we realize at Shine that it's really, really difficult, and that these young people should be commended for pursuing their dreams, and whatever we can do to support them, we do. And thank God we were able to bridge going from live to virtual, because the way our thing works, Matt, is the concert is the focus of our fundraising. We do have a charitable number, and we do have other ways to raise a bit of money throughout the year. But primarily, it's all based on the concert. And it's the concert from the previous year that funds the bursaries for the following year. So we were in a dilemma where we had last year's money, but we were not going to have a concert this year. So in other words, it would have been all over after. And so we were able to bridge the gap from live to virtual. And now we will definitely have a show next year. We don't know if we'll be allowed to do it live or if we'll choose to do it live, but we now can offer it in either format. And as I said, we might go to some kind of hybrid blend, but we survived it. And I'm happy to say that, we've distributed over $77,000 so far. And the amounts are increasing each year. Typically, the bursaries are between $500 at the low end and $2,000 at the top end. So there's a little bit of a variant in there depending on need and other factors. And happy to say that we'll be doing it again next year.
And that's an absolutely wonderful thing. And I also just want to touch on what you mentioned, the appreciation of music and music culture across the pond over in the UK, because I deal with a lot of people over in the UK and Europe with some of the business stuff I have going on outside of this, and just the appreciation. There's more of an appreciation for the developing artist in the UK and Europe than across Canada significantly, because I've seen friends of mine, friends that are in bands, go across to tour, and they're selling out tours, and they've never been to the country. And it's amazing to see that difference of wanting to go to a show as opposed to going to a show for a specific person. And a huge part of that is obviously how the audience views it. And like you said perfectly, the North America always goes for the superstar. They want the polished artist on the silver platter, as opposed to the artist that's been grinding it out for 2 years and is still early in their career and still developing. And the importance and significance of your organization, what you lot do, as well as other funding organizations, needs to be highlighted more, because and I'm an active proponent of this, and I've been publicly called out my local city government in terms of the response to local music venues closing and stuff like that. Obviously, I got no response back because they don't want to muddy their feet. But it's difficult, but it's good to see that we can find ways to survive, and your organization can survive and grow and continue to evolve, as opposed to getting stuck and letting the pandemic and everything that's happened kind of sink you. Because especially for the music industry, the overall response since COVID began was you guys are on your own. And I truly wish that wasn't the way it was viewed, but we have to go with the general populace, and that's just the way it is. And hopefully the culture can change and the appreciation can change. And when shows come back, I truly hope there's a concept I play around with called the live show renaissance, which I feel with the limited amount of venues we're going to have, there's going to be a demand for a lot of those shows. But on the counter side of that, it's going to be difficult for developing artists to get into traditional venues because major companies like Live Nation or any of the agencies, APA, Feldman, are going to hold a monopoly over the calendars for all those major rooms. So artists I feel, are going to have to go even further in the direction of a DIY approach in order to find the spaces to grind their teeth and develop and create and follow that muse. Any thoughts on that culture and the way the live industry could go?
Yeah, I was. You were making so much sense. I was wasn't anticipating a question or comment after it from my part. I was actually thinking of two people that you that I would love to suggest to you. I won't over the air right now, but off air we can talk after. That I think would be marvelous interviews for you. And on that last whole concept that you just delivered, I couldn't get my mind off of one of my colleagues who I'd like to suggest that you talk to. So my thoughts went to maybe what he would say and how he would handle that. So I'll gently take a pass on that because my head was going to a creative place to hopefully help you on that question. But
I mean, I appreciate it. There's nothing wrong with that. I tend to ramble, and because I'm very passionate about this topic.
No, I love it,
just
man. This is a conversation. I love it. Yeah.
Anyway, so Bill, we're actually going to wrap up the episode right now. I want to thank you for taking the time to hang out and talk with me for a bit. Where can people find you and Shine and everything that's going on?
Well, Shine you can get at www.shineconcert.ca, or you can get it at Shine Bursary. Now I get my .cas and .coms mixed up, but it's that simple. And you can just Google it if you want. Shine Concert, Shine Bursary, and everything will come up, including nice pictorial history and a list of everybody who's performed there over the years. And a facility to donate if you so would like to. I'm just redesigning my own website as we speak. So it's under, I think the old one will still pop up. It's BillHeffernan.ca. And you're either going to get my old website, which is contains everything you need. It's a little wordy. We're going to revamp it, or you might get it's under construction. We're right in the middle of it. And if live music does return, so far, the venue that we work out of has not closed, and we would be hoping to return to the Intersteer Tavern on Roncesvalles. The Saturday sessions run from 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock every single Saturday from Labor Day to Canada Day each year. And we were up to show number, 646 or something in our series when COVID shut us down. Yeah. I guess that's where you.
Yep. All of Bill's links and Shine's links will be down in the description below. I encourage you, if you're able to, please donate to Shine, because this is a wonderful organization supporting the development of artists. And I know a lot of listeners are either developing artists themselves or people who really support the music industry. So thank you for taking the time to check out this episode of A Chat with Matt. I will be back next week with another episode. Take it easy, guys. Peace.
Thank you, Matthew.